Part 64. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 631. The moment Xiaopingan took action, the two people were shocked. The person who took action together with Xiaopingan was Xiaolefu. Xiaopingan and Xiaolefu exploded at the same time, surrounding and killing the grey-faced guy. Before taking action, Xiaopingan didn't even know their names, origins, and backgrounds, but Xiaopingan had no choice, because if he didn't take action, Shulongzi, who was still meditating in the phantom plum blossom formation, would the moment the formation is broken, everything will be destroyed. The surging divine power and soul power gathered on Xiaopingan's middle finger and turned into a brand new power. The moment Xiaopingan exploded, he raised his middle finger to the guy with the grey face, because that guy was closest to Xiaopingan and the most convenient. Attacking this seems to be God's arrangement, using Xiaopingan's middle finger to show ridicule and resistance. The two men slashed at the formation with sword after sword. They didn't expect that Xiaopingan, who had been watching coldly, would suddenly attack. This kind of sudden attack is the most difficult to prepare for. Even if the two people were wary of Xiaopingan and were secretly on guard, they never expected that in such a place where summoning spells cannot be used, Xiaopingan's attack would it's so scary. The bright light, twisted into a thread, eclipsed the surroundings the moment it flew out from Xiaopingan's fingertips. It seemed that only the brilliance of Xiaopingan's fingertips was flashing in the entire world. Puff! The bright brilliance, like a sharp sword, directly pierced the chest of the grey-faced Seven Sun Realm powerhouse from a distance of tens of meters. The light remained unabated, passing through the entire peach blossom forest, and then blasted outside the peach blossom forest. On a mountain wall. Under that terrifying high temperature, a mountain wall instantly melted like a candle, revealing a huge round hole with a diameter of several meters. The hole was filled with hot magma. The peach forest penetrated by that ray of light was like a wildfire. The grassland was directly divided into two, and all the peach trees that the light passed and brushed along the way dried up and burned instantly. The Seven Yang Realm expert with a grey face whose chest was penetrated by this ray of light did not expect that he would suffer such a fatal injury in the blink of an eye. The light passed through his chest and caused his chest to burn instantly. A blood hole as big as a fist appeared. The bones and muscles around the blood hole were quickly blackened and carbonized, turning into powder. The whole body was on fire. Xiaopingan was also shocked by the power of his finger. He had just mastered this attack method. This was his second attack. He used all his strength to complete a maximum output. He did not expect this output. The power exceeded his imagination. Ah, beast! The strong man in the Seven Sun Realm spat out blood burning with flames. His eyes were wide open and bloodshot, and his thin face was particularly ferocious. He roared angrily and slashed towards Xiaopingan with one sword. He wanted to kill Xiaopingan. Xiaopingan turned into ashes. The violent half-moon slash struck, causing dirt to fly on the ground, and a trench more than 1 meter deep was plowed out. All the peach blossom trees on both sides of the trench were uprooted and turned into powder. And Xiaopingan had already been prepared. At the moment when the half-moon slash was coming, he came down the mountain with a fierce tiger style, and his whole body was as violent as a dragon. He avoided the sword slashed by the man with the Horcrux sword and had already rushed in front of the man. At the same time, Xiaolefu rushed behind the man the moment Xiaopingan took action, opened his arms, and immediately hugged the grey-faced guy in his arms, making the guy unable to move at the same time. Then a headbutt hit the man's head like a hammer. Xiaolefu's body is that strange metal cube, but the body of the guy with the grey face is made of flesh and blood. This headbutt is no less than hitting that man's head with a hammer. With just a click, that man's brain there were still 2 eyeballs in the blood, which were directly knocked out by Xiaolefu's headbutt, causing another serious injury. Xiaopingan, who had dodged the blow, had instantly cut in front of the master of the Seven Suns realm, whose face was ashen. His fists were like thunder, and he used all his strength to hit the man's chest and abdomen with both fists. Boom! Thunder thundered out of nowhere, and the man's body, under Xiaoping's fists, was directly torn into pieces, turning into countless burning pieces that scattered in all directions. The powerful summoner of the Seven Sun Realm, his body could not withstand Xiaoping's continuous heavy blows, and he was directly killed by Xiaoping on the spot, and his bones turned into ashes. "Why, you beast!" Another guy with a pale face, eyes split open, roared and rushed towards Xiaoping and Xiaolefu. He slashed out the Horcrux sword in his hand and killed them directly. "Come over." This summoner also reacted when Xiaoping took action, but his movements were always a bit slower than Xiaoping's. One move was too late. When Xiaoping took action, he had just struck a blow at the Phantom Plum Blossom formation. Waiting for he reacted and struck Xiaoping with the second blow. His companion was already dead. Xiaoping and Xiaolefu suddenly became 2 against 1. Xiaolefu flashed, dodged the blow, and rushed directly towards the pale guy. "Ha ha ha, there must be something good in this formation. I'm afraid you will snatch my treasure." Xiaoping was talking nonsense, and he grabbed the killed Seven Suns Realm Master and chopped it out. The powerful soul power of Ban Yuzhan's soft sword, a soul weapon, instantly erased the soul mark covering the soul weapon, turning the soft sword into his own. Then he poured divine power into it and slashed it out with the same sword. 2 half-moon slashes collided head-on more than 10 meters in front of Xiaoping. With a bang, the energy overflowed. The peach blossom forest within dozens of meters around was completely destroyed by the violent sword energy, and the ground was completely empty. Impossible. The pale-faced Seven Sun Realm expert was stunned. He could hardly believe what he saw. His companion's Horcrux, the moment the man took it into his hands, could actually be used. Exhibiting the maximum power is simply unbelievable. You must know that even if a summoner in the Seven Suns realm obtains someone else's Horcrux, it will take a lot of effort to turn someone else's Horcrux into his own. Completely erasing the marks left by others on the Horcrux can make the Horcrux easier to use. 2 on 1. The pale guy looked at Xiaolefu, who was still rushing toward him with a blank expression on his forehead, and was frightened. He turned around and ran towards the space passage that entered here. He might as well neatly, without any hesitation. However, Xiaoping would not let him escape from under his eyes. A minute later, in the valley 1,000 meters away from the peach blossom forest, Xiaolefu, who was cut into 2 pieces by the half-moon slash, stretched out his hands from the ground and grabbed the man's legs. However, Xiaoping's half-moon slash fell from the man's upper body passed by. In such a place where magic cannot be used, the most brutal and direct result of the fight is that one life of both parties is exchanged for the other. Xiaoping put away the Horcrux sword, and the body of the pale summoner was left with only a pair of feet still standing on the ground. Only the part below the knees of those feet still existed, and the part above the knees had turned into flying ashes. Xiaolefu's hands tightly grasped the ankles of the pair of feet. Xiaolefu, whose body had become 2 pieces, turned into liquid again and condensed into a new body. After losing Xiaolefu's control on his feet, he fell to the ground. Are these 2 guys poor? Or in the environment here, space equipment cannot be exploded? Xiaoping said to himself. I had just killed 2 summoners from the Seven Sun realm. Although I couldn't use magic here, I took advantage of it. With the help of the divine bone fused to the middle finger of my right hand, and Xiaolefu's help, I also caught the opponent off guard. But after all, for the first time, he killed 2 summoners of the Seven Sun realm. This was something Xiaoping could not imagine before. Xiaoping didn't waste any time, turned around and rushed towards the peach blossom forest. Entering the phantom plum blossom formation, Shulongzi, a silly girl, was still sitting cross-legged, feeling nothing, and had no idea that she had just walked back and forth in front of the gate of hell. Xiaopinggan took off the 2 earrings from Shulongzi's ears and all the visible jewelry that Shulongzi was wearing and threw them on the ground. Then without saying a word, he picked up Shulongzi on his back, turned around and ran away. A moment later, Xiaopinggan and Xiaolefu, who were carrying Shulongzi on their backs, disappeared behind the heavy fog and left here in the blink of an eye. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 632. When Shulongzi woke up, she opened her eyes and found Xiaopinggan standing in front of her, staring at her with a pair of shining triangular eyes. Xiaopinggan's current pair of triangular eyes would make people think that this person is not easy to deal with at first glance. However, after spending time with Xiaopinggan for a long time, for some reason, Shulongzi was surprised when he saw these eyes again. There is a special sense of security. It seemed that as long as this man was by her side, she would never have to worry about any accidents happening. Just like now, when Shulongzi woke up and just used his divine power to move around his body, he found that there was nothing abnormal about his body, which was really reassuring. "Why are you so close? You scared me." Shulongzi glared at Xiaopinggan and stood up, only to find that she and Mei Zheng seemed to be in a large formation. From here, it was confusing outside. Misty and shrouded in a mist that was still spinning, Shulongzi suddenly looked at Xiaopinggan with admiration. "Ah, I didn't expect you to know the formation. When did you arrange it?" "Some days ago. By the way, how many days have I been in seclusion?" "It's just been 100 days, Xiaopinggan said calmly. "You've been staring at me like this for 100 days. Am I that good looking?" Shulongzi blinked her beautiful eyes and glanced at Xiaopinggan. This glance had a coquettish and special look. "Style. There was a flash of light on your body just now, and there was something strange. I thought something happened to you, but I didn't expect that you had completely integrated the divine elixir." Xiaopinggan was outside the formation just now, and the one guarding here was Xiaolefu. It was precisely because Xiaolefu discovered something strange about Shulongzi that Xiaopinggan returned here, put Xiaolefu away, and stood next to Shulongzi waiting for Shulongzi to wake up. At this moment, Shulongzi's whole person's temperament and image have undergone some subtle changes compared to before. Shulongzi was originally beautiful, but now she seems to be more beautiful. Her hair is so black that it's almost demonic, as if she was being raped. The skin on her face looked as if it had been washed by Xuanhuan. There was a faint layer of rosy luster under the skin, which was extremely beautiful. There was also a faint fragrance on her body that was different from before. Of course, from now on, this young lady will stay young forever. Speaking of the divine elixir, Shulongzi suddenly became happy and couldn't help but beam with joy. "The harvest this time is so great. I didn't expect that we could actually get the divine elixir. You can also get the divine elixir from the secret treasure." At this point, Shulongzi suddenly remembered something and quickly asked, "By the way, what is in your divine secret treasure? Have you opened it? Last time we are in such a hurry here that we forgot to see what is in your God's secret treasure." "Ahem, didn't you realize that this place is different from the place where we were before in the land of God's fall? You can already use spells." Xiaopinggan changed the subject lightly. "Ah, isn't this in the peach blossom forest?" Shulongzi was stunned. "Of course not." Xiaopinggan just waved his hand, and with a flash of light, he had a small formation disc in his hand, and he directly received the formation disc into his secret mandala. As soon as the array disc was put away, Shulongzi could clearly see the environment she was in. This was not a peach blossom forest, but a huge tree hole dug out. There were circles in front of her and behind her, all wood grain and wood. The space she was in was not big, about 20 square meters, and there was a hole dug out on the ground not far to her left, leading to the bottom. Shulongzi walked directly to the entrance of the cave, flew down, and then discovered that there was a tree cave space of more than 20 square meters below, and in the tree cave on the lower level, there was a half-man cave leading to the outside of the tree cave. There are several huge green leaves outside the high exit, covering the entrance, but you can still see the light coming in from outside. Shulongzi ducked out of the tree hole. When he came outside the tree hole and saw the scene outside, Shulongzi was so surprised that he couldn't open his mouth from ear to ear. This is a huge forest. The forest is full of giant trees that are 300 to 400 meters high like the ones around her. There are mountains in the distance, and several waterfalls are like silver chains hanging in the mountains. Behind the mountains, a red sun as it rises, the whole land and forest wakes up from a night's sleep. Overhead, a group of 1-meter-long birds with colorful tail feathers were chirping. On the ground, a group of tall herbivorous scaled beasts were wandering leisurely. This forest sea was full of vitality and vitality. The scenery in front of me is beautiful and magnificent. It is definitely not on the pantheon or the place where the gods fell, but it has returned to the world of the god-killing insects. Why are you back? Shulongzi asked Xiaopinggan, who came to her side in surprise. If you don't come back, you will die there. Are the pair of earrings you were wearing before a special horcrux that can allow people to locate your location? When Shulongzi touched his ears, he realized that the earrings he was wearing before were no longer there. Yeah, those are the things that disciples of the Shulong family wear. They are just for easy searching. Where are my earrings? I lost it. In the peach blossom forest, just 8 days ago, I noticed that your earrings were suddenly moving. A moment later, 2 people suddenly broke into the space where we were. Xiaopingyan briefly told the story of how he killed those 2 people that day. After hearing this, Shulongzi's face kept changing, and finally there was a trace of sadness in her eyes. She looked at the rising sun in the distance, her expression was gloomy, and she fell silent for a while. Even Xiaopingyan could feel her sadness. I made you laugh. Thank you for saving me again. Shulongzi forced a smile on Xiaopingyan. How can those people locate you and find you? Xiaopingyan asked. All the divine families may not be as glorious as you think, Shulongzi sighed softly. Maybe some people want to see me die, so that they will have one less competitor, and where in this case, if I die, I can still put the responsibility on you, and someone will take the blame for them. The peers and branches of the divine family are sometimes like enemies. When Shulongzi said this, Xiaopingyan probably understood a little bit. As the saying goes, the most ruthless imperial family is the most ruthless. The divine family that Zulong 11 belongs to is probably no better than the imperial family. The internal competition for limited resources and limited power within a family may be even more bloody. By the way, what do the 2 killers who came to see me look like? Shulongzi suddenly cheered up and asked. Xiaopingyan described the appearance of the 2 people, then moved his hand, pulled out a horcrux soft sword from his waist and handed it to Shulongzi. This is the weapon they use. Shulongzi looked at the horcrux soft sword in Xiaopingyan's hand, and then listened to Xiaopingyan's description of the appearance of the 2 people. He took a long breath and said, I understand. It really didn't exceed my expectations. They are heavenly beings, people from the Evil Alliance. You made the right decision to take me out of there. If you don't take me away, if you hesitate a little, you may not be able to leave by yourself in the end. People from the Tianxia Alliance never act alone. If they want to find me, definitely a large team of people dispatched together. What kind of organization is the Tianxia Alliance? Xiaopingyan asked. The Heavenly Evil Alliance is the top killer organization in the world of god-killing insects. Those who can join this organization must at least be summoners from the Nether Realm. To a certain extent, the Heavenly Evil Alliance and the Wanchen sect are also somewhat similar. They are both it uses training resources to lure other summoners to join and do many dangerous things. Many sects, divine descendant families, and secular power families can't do things, so you can ask them to do them. I'll give you this horcrux soft sword for self-defense. Xiaopingyan handed over the soft sword. I have self-defense. You'd better destroy this soft sword and don't show it again. Once the people of the Tianxia Alliance know that the people they sent died in your hands, they will definitely find ways to retaliate against you. Hearing what Xu Longzi said, Xiaoping'an thought for a while and received the soft sword of the soul weapon. Remember, those two people were killed by me in the peach forest. It has nothing to do with you. It's natural for me to kill them. You don't need to bring trouble to yourself. Xu Longzi looked serious. Warned. It doesn't matter. Xiaoping'an shrugged, only with a little challenge can we have the motivation to move forward. By the way, where is this world of god-killing insects? Xu Longzi asked. I don't know either. I took you to escape from the place where the gods fell, and I was swept here by the turbulence of space. There is no one within a radius of thousands of miles here. In the past few days, I have seen summoners flying over from the sky. I can count them with one slap. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 633. The world of god-killing insects is so big that Xiaoping'an really doesn't know where it is. There is a woman in seclusion to take care of, and she is still being hunted by unknown masters. Xiaoping'an cannot leave here to explore very far these days, so she can only hide in a tree hole with Xu Longzi to stay up. In order to cope with the due to possible emergencies, Xiaoping'an did not even fuse the boundary beads that he had obtained before. Xiaoping'an was afraid that something might happen to him when he was fusing the world beads. If a master attacked him, he wouldn't even have time to react. He and Xu Longzi might have to confess. So most of these days, Xiaoping'an continued to refine the phalange of the right index finger of the god's body in his body, and the time passed quite satisfactorily. Xu Longzi was not surprised when she heard Xiaoping'an said she didn't know where this place was. She just looked at the surrounding environment, waved her hand, and summoned 9 ancient tripods floating in the air in front of her. The tripods resonated gently and formed the shape of 9 palaces in the sky. Each one emitted light and connected together. In the middle of the 9 tripods, a huge map unfolded. The mountains and rivers were clearly visible on the map, and there was also a light spot in a large mountain forest. The place where it is flashing. Juding diagram. Xiaoping'an looked at the 3 small seals on the map unfolding in the void, and his heart was shocked. I didn't expect that there is such a summoning technique. The legend of Juding diagram is the first map of China cast by Deu. This technique seems to be able to draw the map position of the area where it is locked. Xu Longzi looked at the map, waved his hand, and both the Juding and the map disappeared. We are now in Longjiayuan, southwest of the god-killing insect realm. Xu Longzi said to Xiaoping'an. Ryakakuhara. The information about Longjiayuan appeared in Xiaoping'an's mind, and he took a breath of cold air. Longjiayuan is millions of kilometers away from the Immortal Sea. If a summoner flew here from the Immortal Sea, he would not be able to eat or drink. It will probably take more than a year to fly. I didn't expect to come here. There was originally a large city in Longjiao called Longjiao City, which was also an important city for the human race in the god-killing insect realm. What are you going to do now? Xu Longzi looked at Xiaoping'an and asked. At this moment, the two of them no longer had a relationship between kidnapping and being kidnapped. Instead, they were more like friends sharing will and woe. I'm going to find a place to retreat for a period of time, Xiaoping'an said. He had tasted the benefits of refining the body of the gods before. What Xiaoping'an is thinking about now is how to find a place to retreat and completely use 1 or 2 hands of the divine body. Refining the body to see what effect it will have. What about you? Xu Longzi thought for a while and sighed. My family must still be looking for me. It's difficult to contact my family here in the wilderness. If there is no news from me these days, my family must be anxious. Yes, the Shilong family has a contact point in Longjiao City, I want to go to Longjiao City to contact the family first. Aren't you afraid that the people from the Tianxia Alliance are waiting for you to fall into their trap in Longjiao City? Longjiao City has the rules of Longjiao City. Even if there are people from the Tianxia League in Longjiao City is not a place where they can mess around. In comparison, those who meet the Tianxia League in this wilderness people or high-level Zerg are more dangerous. If you want to retreat, you might as well go to Longjiao City. There are many places in Longjiao City where experts can retreat. The safety is absolutely guaranteed. It is much safer than just finding a place to retreat in the wild. There are more, and there are many summoners gathered in Longjiao City, and you can also find some rare world beads. Xiaoping'an rubbed his chin. For him, it didn't matter where he retreated. He could just go underground and find a place to arrange the battle board. However, Xu Longzi said that rare world beads could be found in Longjiao City. This aspect has great appeal to Xiaoping'an, so why not go and take a look? Okay, then I will also go to Longjiao City to have a look. Xiaoping'an nodded. Xu Longzi also nodded, and suddenly remembered something. By the way, you interrupted me when I asked you a question. You haven't said what is in your God's secret treasure. Actually, there is nothing. Xiaoping'an wanted to fool him. Xu Longzi looked at Xiaoping'an and suddenly smiled sweetly, showing his white teeth, and whispered softly, "Okay, I understand, you got the artifact in the secret of God. Don't worry, I will keep it a secret for you, just he will tell our family elders according to the rules, but I have no control over whether our elders will tell others." "Okay, you can be ruthless. Take a look at what this thing is." Xiaoping'an immediately surrendered. With a wave of his hand, Xiaolefu, who looked exactly like him now, walked out of the secret mandala. Xiaolefu bowed to Xu Longzi, and then his figure melted like mercury and turned into a metal cube again, floating in front of the two of them. "Good fortune gold." Xu Longzi's eyes lit up and he suddenly screamed. "What is good fortune gold?" Xiaoping'an asked. "It's the thing in front of you. Once this thing recognizes its owner, it can transform into various human forms or animals according to your wishes, like a clone or a pet, with one speciality and multiple abilities, and even a summoner spell that you can cast. He can cast any spell, but all of this is not in vain. It has a price. It will consume your divine power and physical strength. If you let it participate in the battle with you, the consumption of your physical strength and divine power will be almost the same as your normal consumption. Twice that, and this thing can't be too far away from you. If the distance is too far, you will no longer be able to sense it." "Yes, that's true." Xiaoping'an nodded. "The most critical point about this thing is that it is difficult to be killed by ordinary means. It will not be refined unless it falls into the domain space of the fire system or the kingdom of God. Otherwise, even if it is beaten to pieces, it will not be refining, will be reunited." "Can this thing be refined by the fire domain space?" Xiaoping'an said with some surprise. "All things in nature are interdependent and mutually reinforcing each other. Although this good fortune gold is infinitely changeable, it naturally has its weaknesses. Just don't let it lead to death. If you see someone who can use the fire field, you'd better keep this thing away from that one. Stay away. If you can use it properly, this good fortune gold can be your good assistant before you advance to demigod, and it is priceless," Xu Longzi said, and reached out to touch the floating metal. "Block," said with envy, "I have dreamed of having a baby like this since I was a child, but I didn't expect that you would actually get it." Just when Xu Longzi touched the good fortune Ruyi gold, the good fortune Ruyi gold turned into Mei Zheng's appearance again, and Xu Longzi's hand happened to touch Mei Zheng's face. Feeling that something was wrong, Xu Longzi blushed and quickly retracted his hand. Then he moved his hand and handed Xiaoping'an a crystal-like mask with a pretended indifferent expression. "Seeing how you have been protecting me these days, for the sake of saving me, I will give you this phantom god mask. If you see people from the Shalong family, stay away from them, so that it will be easier for you to escape in the future. Why didn't you take out this mask before? Xiaoping'an looked at Shulongzi with a toothache. This girl is quite cunning. She had never taken out this mask before. Humph, I'm a girl, can't I have some backup plans? Shulongzi raised her head and said confidently, if you don't want to, forget it. Shulongzi wanted to take the mask back, but Xiaoping'an had already taken the mask of the phantom god. Okay, thank you very much. The things Shulongzi took out were definitely good goods. Although he had the power of transformation, it would also be good to have another phantom god mask. The mask of the phantom god was like crystal, extremely delicate. When Xiaoping'an took the mask in his hand, he felt how extraordinary this thing was. The aura of this mask was sacred and majestic. It was by no means an ordinary item. It reminded him of his previous encounter with Styx. The artifact fragment that Zhenjun got when he cooperated, although the aura on this mask is not as powerful as the artifact fragment that he got before, and is much smaller, but the feeling is very similar. How to use this phantom god mask? Xiaoping'an asked. Wear this thing on your face, and you can become whoever you want. Why don't you put it on now? It's convenient to go to Longjiao City, and you won't be shunned by people from the Long family again. Recognize. And you? Shulongzi smiled and said, I still have this thing, and I won't need it for the time being. Let's go, stop inking. It will take several days to get to Longjiao City from here. After Shulongzi finished speaking, without waiting for Xiaoping'an to say anything else, he flew directly towards the southwest. Xiaoping'an put the phantom god mask on his face. With the thought, he changed his face and closed it. After getting up, Xiaolefu also flew towards Shulongzi. Seeing Xiaoping'an's changing face, Shulongzi chuckled, have you never been a handsome boy before? How did you change your face like this? Ha ha ha, I think this face matches you better. Xiaoping'an's face changed at this moment. He really had sword eyebrows, starry eyes, and a face as beautiful as jade. He looked like a good young man in troubled times. Not to mention, he really matched Shulongzi. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 634. 3 days later, at nightfall, Xiaoping'an and Shulongzi were flying in the sky. As the sun slowly set, the sky and the earth became dark. The ground under their feet seemed to be covered with a black gauze curtain, and everything gradually became quiet. At the height they were flying at, everything on the ground looked almost flat, and the stacked mountains looked like nothing more than folds of the earth from a height. In this silence, the huge space crack in the sky above our heads becomes more and more oppressive. In the huge space crack, the huge light and shadow of Pantheon shows a tragic crimson, like food being chewed by monsters, the lightning flashing from time to time and the rolling dark red clouds in the crack always make people feel like a terrifying monster will come out of the space crack at some point. How much do you lack world pearls? Shulongzi wore a thin layer of green gauze on her face, revealing only 2 beautiful eyes. She looked mysterious and beautiful. She wore a thin layer of green gauze on her face. Long 11 hid his true face, no longer worried about being recognized at a glance. Shulongzi was complaining about Xiaoping'an, his tone was unceremonious sarcasm, a flying winged flame insect that leads to the netherworld, seeing you from afar, you actually chased me for more than 2 hours and flew more than 1,000 kilometers. I was convinced. If I wasn't worried that something would happen to you, I wouldn't be too lazy to go with you. You can bring out some of the powerful people in the nether realm. How self-conscious and stylish are you? It's so embarrassing to be treated like you've never seen insect crystals and world beads. You are a well-fed man and don't know how hungry a man is. As long as there is an opportunity to get the world pearl, of course I will not miss it. You can't reach 1,000 miles without taking small steps. The sea does not reject the small stream, so it can become big. If you want to make further progress, the world no matter how many beads there are, I won't mind them. Xiaopingan didn't refute, just shrugged, and said, just now, he had just finished dealing with the flying winged flame insect, and obtained an insect crystal from the nether realm, and another the foundation building world bead was useless to him, but the price was that he flew more than 1,000 kilometers while chasing the winged flame insect with Shulongzi, and was delayed for 2 hours. So he was scolded by Shulongzi. Shulongzi rolled his eyes at Xiaopingan, find a place to rest. Okay, Xiaopingan nodded, and then pointed to a mountain peak underground in front of him. I see there seems to be a cave there. According to the amount of divine power the two of them had, they could have flown all the way directly to Longjiao City. However, that would have consumed a lot of spiritual power and physical strength along the way. If they were in danger and their personal condition was not good, they would easily suffer. Another thing Shulongzi felt was that that's not elegant enough, so the two of them have been rushing during the day and finding a place to rest and eat something at night. Shulongzi is unstoppable. He has to take a bath every night, and then change into a dress the next morning, which is fragrant. Xiang Mai continued on her way. In the blink of an eye, the two of them landed outside the cave in the wild. The cave seemed very dry and deep. Only when they entered the cave did they realize that there was already an owner in the cave. The owner of the cave is a group of animals that are many times larger than a raccoon, but look similar to a raccoon: dark eye circles, a round face, white ears, and a big fluffy tail. These in the world of god-killing insects there are many non-Zerg native animals, and Xiaopingan doesn't know what they are called. The owner of the cave and his family looked at the two people who suddenly broke into their residence in shock and started to show their teeth. Sorry, I'm occupying your home today. Shulongzi smiled and couldn't help but say something to the animals hiding in the cave, and then waved his hand to summon a green guardian. The barrier is on yourself. Xiaopingan also casually cast a green guardian enchantment on himself. As soon as the green guardian barrier appeared, the nervous raccoon family suddenly calmed down and no longer had any hostility toward the two of them. They continued to wrap their tails around their bodies and sleep soundly. Green Guardian is the most basic spell that was obtained when the Foundation Establishment World Bead was fused, but this spell is very effective. Once a summoner casts this spell, he will not encounter ordinary people in the wild. If you are attacked by wild beasts and poisonous insects, those wild beasts and poisonous insects will regard you as one of their own and a part of nature, and will not be aggressive towards you. Xiaopingan placed a formation disc outside the cave to block the atmosphere here. With a move of his hand, a few more puppet spiders crawled out of his hand. They crawled to the entrance and above the cave to stare at the sentry realm. A temporary foothold was completed. Shulongzi waved his hand and summoned several maids and servants, and lit a fire on the floor of the cave. The summoned maids and servants took out tea sets, teapots and other things, and some took out tables and chairs to clean them. In a short time, they set up a place in the cave, cooked tea and barbecue for the two of them. Everything was done in an orderly manner, just like on vacation, without any grievances. This high-level summoner's little boy can be wrapped up so comfortably no matter where he is. Sitting on the soft stool, Xiaopingan drank a mouthful of fragrant tea, ate fragrant barbecue, and sighed with satisfaction. Do you know why I work so hard? Because I also want to live with you one day. On days like this, everything is available with just a wave of your hand, and you don't have to worry about anything. What is this? Shulongzi rolled his eyes at Xiaopingan. Those high-level summoners who have gathered together in the kingdom of God live like kings and gods in their own kingdom of God, with 72 concubines in 3 palaces, 6 courtyards, etc. If we can get it all together, none of them will want to come out of the kingdom of God. The relatives of the raccoon family who had just fallen asleep smelled the aroma of barbecue here. They all squirmed their innocent bodies and came over. They straightened up and looked at the hands of Shulongzi and Xiaopingan with eager eyes. After eating the barbecue, Shulongzi smiled and fed the big guys some meat. The big guys lay obediently at Xulongzi's feet, as if they were feeding them as they pleased. By the way, Xulongzi, who was stroking his raccoon relative, suddenly thought of something, turned his head, with a special light flashing in his eyes, and asked seemingly casually, "I heard that some men call the master especially likes the world beads that can summon beautiful women, and then he can summon beautiful women to keep him company. They all look like big perverts with impure motives. Can you summon beautiful women? Let me see if you can summon one." Xiaopingan can summon Wang Zhejian, but at this time, Xiaopingan shook his head wisely, with a serious face, "I'm kidding, how can I summon a beautiful woman? I have never seen such a world bead." "Humph, that's pretty much it. Don't be like those cousins in our family. After they mastered the world beads to summon beauties, they didn't care about anything. They all look so lewd. It's really annoying." After chatting for a while, drinking tea and eating, almost an hour passed, and the night outside turned completely dark. Xulongzi was about to ask the summoned maid to pack her things. She was about to wash up when the entire cave floor and the earth suddenly trembled, and a terrifying and powerful aura of divine power came from a distance. The aura of divine power, with a huge sense of oppression, came from hundreds of kilometers away, shaking the secret mandala of the two people. It was not an ordinary summoner, but the aura of a powerful demigod. The vibrations and tremors coming from the ground were not earthquakes. They could be strong men fighting each other. Xiaopingan and Xulongzi looked at each other, and they both saw shock in each other's eyes. The next second, Xulongzi put away all the things he had summoned, and extinguished the fire in the cave with a wave of his hand. Xiaopingan put away the puppet spider and the formation disc outside, and the two rushed out of the cave at the same time. People simultaneously flew in the direction from which the terrifying aura came. Just after flying a few kilometers, Xiaopingan saw a strange rolling red cloud in the sky in the distance, like a burning sea of blood, appearing in the sky with the aura of destroying everything, and seemed to topple down at any time. Above the red clouds in the blood sea, countless soldiers and warriors stood in the clouds like heavenly soldiers and generals, with murderous intent rising into the sky. "Mighty demigod, the kingdom of God has arrived!" Xulongzi suddenly exclaimed. Xiaopingan was actually even more shocked, because he felt a familiar aura from the churning sea of blood and flames in the kingdom of heaven. That aura made Xiaopingan's heart tremble. This was the blood demon section, the aura of the leader Xuanhuan. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 635. Xuanhuan was the person Xiaopingan was most afraid of meeting. Looking at the rolling blood clouds in the night sky in front of him and the kingdom of God revealed, Xiaopingan's little heart was beating loudly. He suddenly felt a little dry in the mouth and almost wanted to turn around and escape. A powerful demigod like Xuanhuan was so powerful that in order to kill him, he was able to refine the entire Yushan city and leave no one behind for thousands of miles. If he had known that he was nearby, it would have been okay. There are demigod-level experts fighting against each other. There is something big going on over there. Let's go take a look. Xulongzi didn't notice anything unusual about Xiaopingan at all. Instead, he suddenly became excited and immediately flew in that direction. Xiaopingan also calmed down and kept calm. He immediately followed Xulongzi and flew quickly towards the place where violent fluctuations were heard in the distance. Although Xuanhuan is terrifying, if Xuanhuan came to find him, then he would probably have been wiped out under his kingdom of God. Xuanhuan would not be so stupid as to make a big noise for no reason to scare people, so when he met him here, arriving at Xuanhuan was an absolute surprise, and there was no way Xuanhuan knew he was here. Xiaopingan was confident in his secret method of transformation, and he was also very curious. He didn't know what happened to Xuanhuan. He actually made such a big noise in Longjiayuan and was desperate to break out of the kingdom of God. Just as Xiaopingan and Xulongzi were flying into the distance, Xuanhuan's divine kingdom had appeared, and the sea of blood in the sky was pouring down with the flames. There were thousands of troops and horses standing on the blood cloud, and all kinds of strange creatures. The beasts and raptors also rushed down immediately, with the power of destroying the heaven and the earth. The whole earth was shaking, and the sky hundreds of miles away suddenly seemed to be pulled up with a bloody sky, covering the sky block out the sun. Then, under the sky full of blood and fire and thousands of troops, a golden beam of light suddenly rose into the sky, splitting the blood curtain in the sky into two. The monstrous blood and fire encountered that golden light, just like a rushing wave meeting a standing rock. No matter how fierce the wave was, the rock would not move at all. That golden light illuminated the ground for hundreds of miles as bright as day. In the golden light, an old voice vibrated in the sky like thunder, crazy, domineering, with the aura of destroying everything, and it was similar to howling and weeping. What is heaven? What is the Deo? What are all living beings? Why do you want to destroy my family and country? I have already become a god. Why do you want to destroy us? Why do you want to destroy us? What about gods? What about gods? Ha ha ha. As this sound appeared, the vibrations on the ground doubled in intensity in an instant. Even hundreds of kilometers away, Xiaoping'an could feel the huge energy shock wave coming from the distance, sweeping across the mountains and causing the air in the sky and ground to tremble. Trembling. White-haired crazy god. After hearing that voice and seeing that golden light, Xulongzi, who was flying, exclaimed again. His face suddenly changed, and he immediately pulled Xiaoping'an back. Okay, let's watch here, don't go there. Ah, what are you afraid of? There is a madman there with terrifying strength. He goes crazy. But no matter who you are, when this happens, I will watch from the side. As long as I reveal my identity, the other demigods will know that I am from the Shalong family. No matter how crazy you beat me, you don't dare to touch me. That lunatic doesn't care who you are. You said that madman is the white-haired mad god. Who is the white-haired mad god? I have never seen the white-haired crazy god. This is a legendary figure who has not appeared for hundreds of years, but what he said just now is his signature. Is he very powerful? A sad look appeared on Xulongzi's face, and he sighed, looking at the pillar of light rising into the sky in the distance, and shook his head. I heard that this white-haired mad god was the most promising to be crowned the god of war more than 1,000 years ago. A demigod-level powerhouse, he was also the prince of a large continental country in the Yuan-Kai world. However, he was obsessed with cultivation and ignored worldly affairs. When he once explored the secret realm of the void, it took too long. When he came out, his country, the evil cult is raging and has been destroyed, and no one in the clan or family members has been spared. So miserable. It is said that at that time, he had already solved the final hurdle of becoming a god. He originally wanted to return to his country to become a god and hold a grand celebration to become a god. Unexpectedly, what he saw after he returned was that his family and country were in ruins and the graves of his relatives were overgrown with weeds. Even the woman he loved most had turned into bones long ago, and then he went crazy, his hair turned white overnight, and he aged for thousands of years. Then he went on a killing spree, killing cult demigods and millions of cult members, and then destroyed the cult all by himself. The 6 insect nests, after killing the 6 insect kings, disappeared without a trace. They only appeared every 100 years. Every time they appeared, they would go crazy and kill people, making people's faces change. Hearing what Xulongzi said, Xiaoping'an took a breath of cold air. So, isn't this white-haired mad god the strongest among the demigods? It's possible, but I don't know much about the state of demigods. We can't measure the state of demigods. I heard my grandfather say that if the white-haired mad god wasn't crazy, he would have been able to become a god long ago. But after he went crazy, his strength fluctuated, so it's hard to say. Xiaoping'an looked at the battlefield in the distance and swallowed. If his remote viewing ability was still there, he could see things in the distance clearly even if he stood here. Now he was close to the battlefield of the powerful demigod. It's too dangerous. I really don't know how the battle between the white-haired mad god and Xuanhuan will go. If the white-haired mad god can kill Xuanhuan, it will be a great joy. Just when Xiaopinggan was thinking this, she saw Xulongzi wave his hand, first pointing at herself. Xulongzi's eyes flashed with golden light, and then pointing at Xiaopinggan. Xiaopinggan only felt his eyes after a burst of coolness. Looking at the battlefield hundreds of miles away, it was already as if it were now. Ah, what secret method is this? Xiaopinggan asked in surprise. It's just clairvoyance. Xulongzi said calmly, then looked at the direction of the battlefield and took a breath of air, so strong. Xiaopinggan looked over and was shocked. In the battlefield for hundreds of miles, the sky overturned, blood clouds pressed down on the city, and endless battle formations and summons came from all directions, rushing towards a figure standing proudly in the void of the battlefield. Xuanhuan's demonic energy surged into the sky, his blood and hair flew into the air, and the kingdom of God appeared behind him, pressing towards the figure in the void of the battlefield with endless coercion. The figure facing the pressure of the Xuanhuan divine kingdom was an old man with messy white hair and wrinkles on his face like knives and axes. He stood arrogantly in the void, raising his head and looking at the man who was pressing down. In the kingdom of God, the expression on his face seems to be madness or memories, and his eyes are full of thousands of years of vicissitudes. When the kingdom of blood comes, all the mountains within 100 miles above the ground will instantly shatter and turn into flat ground. The pressure on every inch of air here can turn steel into slag. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of millions of demonic soldiers arrived, each with murderous intent. If the sky has no eyes, I will open my eyes for the sky. The white-haired figure didn't let out a long sigh until this moment, and then punched out. With just one punch, billions of warriors, ferocious dragons and tigers, and giant chariots were reduced to ashes. Between heaven and earth, there was only the agitation of the fist of the white-haired mad god, which was unparalleled in all eternity. On the ground with a radius of 100 miles, the mountain peaks just turned into a flat surface by the kingdom of God, but this punch turned the earth into a sea, and a hole suddenly opened in the bloody sky. In the hole, countless stars moved and changed unpredictably. The kingdom of God that Xuanhuan came to suddenly split into two, shaking endlessly in the sky, and countless fragments collapsed from the kingdom of God. The powerful shock wave coming from the ground and in the air came to the sky where Xiaopinggan and Xulongzi were standing in the blink of an eye, washing away the wind and clouds, sweeping in like a storm with a sharp blade. Xiaopinggan waved his hand, and a water shield he and Xulongzi were wrapped together. When the water shield changed from a circle to an oval due to the force, the shock wave passed by the two of them, and countless grass and trees on the ground were swept away. No matter how powerful the beast Zerg is, under such a punch, it is like a cicada, not daring to move, bowing its head and whispering, not daring to show its head. Xiaopinggan was stunned. With just one punch, the earth changes and the stars change. It is so powerful that it is difficult to understand. When the fist came, Xuanhuan vomited blood, and his hair was covered with blood, which suddenly turned into ashes. The skin on Xuanhuan's face cracked, and the divine light spattered, which was extremely terrifying. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 636. Shocking, so shocking. Xiaopinggan and Xulongzi couldn't recover from the battle just now for a long time. They saw Xuanhuan, who was bleeding all over his body, flying back like a bloody meteor. He was 100 miles away in a blink of an eye and fled towards the west. The white-haired mad god caught up with him and punched out again. Xuanhuan took it. With one punch, an arm burned into ashes in the air. When Mad God wanted to hit Zhu Emotion's head with his third punch, Xiaoping'an's heart was in his throat at that time. He wished that Mad God would punch Zhu Emotion's head to pieces, and then he would lose a confidant. Serious trouble. At that most critical moment, Zhu Emotion spurted a mouthful of blood into the air. The blood turned into a demon's eye dozens of kilometers in size in the air. The demon's eye bloomed with a bloody light, blocking the Mad God's third attack. Fist. When the huge devil's eye collapsed, Zhu Emotion spurted out a second mouthful of blood, and a hole was melted into the void by his second mouthful of blood. Zhu Emotion got into the hole and disappeared. The battle is over. On that day, he forcibly broke into the Great Shang Kingdom and went to the capital to refine Yushan City. Zhu Emotion, the most powerful leader of the Blood Demon cult, was punched by the Mad God. He only managed to hold on for 3 punches before he dropped one of his hands and turned bald and fled in embarrassment. If he hadn't seen it in person, Xiaoping'an wouldn't have believed that there was such a strong person in the world. The lonely figure of the Mad God stood in the void, with a vast ocean under his feet. The sky above his head was full of violent space turbulence. The white hair on the Mad God's head was messy in the air like a holy avalanche, sad and crazy. He is domineering but aloof and desolate. The Mad God raised his hands and shouted to the sky, with tears in his eyes, but he laughed loudly. What is the sky? What is the Dao? What are all living beings? Why do you want to destroy my country? I have become a god. Why do you want to destroy us? Why do you want to destroy us? What about God? What about God? Ha ha ha. The desolate and angry voice of the Mad God resounded between heaven and earth, shaking all directions. Suddenly, the Mad God turned his head, and his violent blood-red eyes suddenly looked at Xiaoping'an and Xulongzi. Even though they were hundreds of miles apart, at this moment, Xiaoping'an felt as if someone had punched them head-on. The whole person's heart suddenly tightened, the secret mandala and the blood in the whole body shook. A great terror that was about to be destroyed at any time shocked Xiaoping'an's heart. This feeling is like the kingdom of God above your head is about to come over, and the pressure on you is not that great. Damn, even though they were hundreds of kilometers away and using illusion to become invisible, they could be discovered. At this moment, Xiaoping'an truly understood the strength of Mad God. He was more than just a demigod, he was probably close to a god. No, Mad God has discovered us, run away. Xulongzi's expression changed, and he pulled Xiaoping'an, and the two of them turned around and ran away. However, Xiaoping'an and Xulongzi turned around and ran away quickly. Before they flew 500 meters away, a mountain-like figure was already standing in front of them, with snow-white wind flying around their heads, violent eyes, and sad expressions on their faces. The wrinkles were deep and painful, and there was an aura that could destroy the world. Not seeing any movement from the Mad God, Xiaoping'an and Xulongzi felt that the space around them solidified instantly. The two of them were like flies sealed in wax, unable to move anymore. Senior Mad God, Xulongzi of the Shilong family wishes to say hello to Senior. Xulongzi quickly spoke to Mad God. While speaking, Xulongzi suddenly stood in front of Xiaoping'an, blocking Xiaoping'an. Behind yourself. Xulong, Xulong. Looking at Xulongzi, Mad God's violent eyes suddenly became confused, and he murmured to himself, seeming to be caught in some kind of memory, I seem to have heard of this name before. The blood aura on your body, I seem to have seen, more than 800 years ago, in the Lishan Devil's Cave, there was a little kid from the Taiji realm who was very similar to you, I killed him that year. The 1,000 Demons gang from Lishan Demon Cave, that little kid is very courageous, and even followed me and picked up a lot of things. The smile on Xulongzi's face became even wider, his attitude became more respectful, and he quickly said, Senior Mad God, our ancestor Xulongjian met our senior in Lishan Demon Cave 800 years ago. I didn't expect that my senior would still remember that our ancestor has always. He said that Senior Kuangshen has unparalleled grace and unparalleled strength. When we see him today, it is indeed the case. He really makes me admire him. It is truly a life well spent to see the grace of Senior today. Then, who is he? Mad God's eyes suddenly turned to Xiaopingan, and his eyes suddenly became ferocious and violent. Xiaopingan was the first to be affected by the terrifying murderous intent from Mad God urgent, the energy and blood in the whole body shook. He opened his mouth, and with a wow sound, a mouthful of blood spurted out. The spit out blood was still in the air, but turned into flames and ashes under the murderous aura, which was extremely terrifying. Senior, he is also from the Shilong family. Xulongzi quickly exclaimed, suddenly opened his hand and blocked Xiaopingan. You're talking nonsense, he doesn't have the aura of the Shilong family on him. The Mad God roared fiercely, and the situation changed. The violent sound was like thunder exploding in the ears, shaking the heads of Xiaopingan and Xulongzi. Buzzing. Of course he doesn't have the aura of the Shilong family, he is my man. Xulongzi still stood in front of Xiaopingan. This silly girl, Xiaopingan wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, pulled Xulongzi behind him, took 2 steps forward without fear, looked directly at the Mad God, and bowed. Junior Mei Zheng has met Senior Mad God. The Mad God's fierce and violent eyes had been staring at Xiaopingan. At this time, his eyes suddenly blurred again, and then shed tears and said to Xiaopingan, I didn't expect, you are like me, are poor people, the family and country are broken, bones and withered graves, where are the living people, the spiritual world is also destroyed, so what if we get the body of a god, we are the only 2 poor people left in the world, poor guy. The crazy god shed tears, turned around and strode away from the air. One step was 100 miles away, and another step later, a space crack like a step appeared in the void of the sky. The crazy god stepped into the space crack in one step, and his body the form then disappeared, and the entire sky was filled with the 3 words poor man. Muttered by the Mad God. Watching Mad God leave, Xiaopingan was sweating profusely and his heart was trembling. Xiaopingan had just advanced to the 7 Yang realm before, and Xiaopingan was still a little complacent in his heart. But when he saw the Mad God today, Xiaopingan realized that he was like an ant in front of the Mad God. That Mad God can actually see through his roots in the spiritual world at a glance. It's so terrifying. He also has a body of a god. I don't know if he's talking about himself or him. Could it be that the Mad God also got a body of a god, so that's why so powerful? For a moment, Xiaopingan's thoughts were agitated and he didn't know what to say. Xulongzi let out a long breath and suddenly looked at Xiaopingan with doubtful eyes, are you hiding something from me? Why did the Mad God say that you are a pitiful person like him? What other spiritual world and gods are there? Body. Ahem, I don't know what Senior Mad God is talking about, but you, why did you say that I am your man, and you were standing in front of me just now? Xiaopingan turned from defense to offense, looking straight at him with 2 eyes. Xulongzi. Xulongzi panicked slightly, and suddenly there was a rosy color on her cheeks. Then she pretended to be calm and defended, you, don't think too much, I just didn't want to see you die at that time under the hands of Senior Crazy God. Senior Crazy God is moody. He wanted to kill you just now. 1 finger was enough. You saved me once before, and I will save you once now. We are even, Oh, is that so? Xiaopingan looked at Xulongzi suspiciously. Of course it is, like this, Xulongzi said in a strong but powerful tone. Xiaopingan suddenly smiled and nodded, looking relieved, okay, as long as you are not greedy for my body and have my ideas, I will be relieved. The little panic and emotion in his heart were instantly destroyed by Xiaopingan's words. Xulongzi grinned at his teeth and glared at Xiaopingan, get out. After scolding, Xulongzi himself laughed again, I have never seen any male pervert, you look like an ugly guy, who cares about you? That's right. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 637. Golden Summoner. 10 days later, in Longjiao City, two figures, a man and a woman, flew in from a distance, stood in the sky outside Longjiao City, and suddenly stopped. The world of the god-killing insects is infinitely vast, and most places are sparsely populated. They are the territory of the Zerg and various beasts. There are also very few cities and gathering places for summoners in the god-killing insect world. They often cannot be found in an area of tens of millions of square kilometers. There can be a city, and once it exists, these cities will also become the gathering points of the entire region with a radius of tens of millions of ordinary kilometers, needless to say, bustling. Just like the Longjiao City in front of you. The sky is filled with various people flying around. There are figures of summoners in the sky in all directions. Some summoners are flying by their own divine power, while others are riding various summoned beasts. Or pets, and some, even flying tools flying various magic weapons and soul weapons back and forth in the sky. Longjiao City covers an area of tens of thousands of square kilometers. In this vast area, there are hundreds of peaks, large and small. Those peaks are tens of thousands of meters high, towering into the sky, and some are hundreds of meters low. They are exceptionally graceful. Just on, or around these peaks, there are various buildings, street restaurants, various shops, and there is a bustling and lively scene everywhere. In this case, the two summoners, a man and a woman, who had just flown in from a distance, were not noticeable at all. This is Longjiao City. The Shillong family has a family hall on Qiun Peak over there. I will be fine if I go to the Shillong family's hall. There are people from the Shillong family sitting in the hall. They will notify my family. Shu as Long 11 spoke, although his expression was pretending to be relaxed, there was always a hint of forced laughter. In the past 2 days, the closer Shulongzi got to Longjiao City, the slower Shulongzi flew during the day and the longer he rested at night, as if he was deliberately delaying something, especially in the last 3 days, the two of them flew a full flight. For 5 days. But no matter what, today Longjiao City still flew to it. It was time for the two of them to separate. Will people from the Tianxia Alliance come to trouble you? Xiaopingan asked. You won't be afraid when you come out into the open. This is actually an internal matter of the Shillong family. I will handle it. Shulongzi smoothed his hair on his temples and smiled. Xiaopingan scratched his head, not knowing what to say. In the end, he could only move his hand, took out a box, and handed it to Shulongzi. This, I'll give it to you. Ah, what is this? Shulongzi looked straight at Xiaopingan. It's just a formation plate that I refined for you on the road these days, as well as a few mechanical puppets that can protect you. I've kept the usage instructions in it as a souvenir. Shulongzi was very happy and put away the wooden box handed over by Xiaopingan. Will we meet again in the future? Yes. Okay, then I take it seriously. Shulongzi smiled and pointed in the directions of Longjiao City to introduce Xiaopingan. If you want to find a retreat, you can go to the Iron Sword Peak in the east. There are experts in charge and a good backstage. You can rent a cave and the safety is guaranteed. If you want boundary beads, you can go here and check out Longjiafang City over there. There are summoners markets and auctions there, and some rare ones. World beads often appear here, and major families will arrange people to collect world beads here. If you have quick eyes and quick hands, you may be able to get some very rare world beads. Okay. Then, see you next time. Shulongzi said with a bit of reluctance on his face. After taking a deep look at Xiaopingan, he turned around and flew towards the Shillong family's family hall. Xiaopingan stood in the air, looking at Shulongzi's back, feeling a little disappointed. The picture of Shulongzi blocking him and the mad god kept appearing in his mind, and his mind was a little turbulent. No one can be ruthless except grass and trees. Xuanhuan has never revealed Eleven's thoughts about him, but that doesn't mean he doesn't know. Xuanhuan, who had flown several miles away in the blink of an eye, couldn't help but stop and turned around to see Xiaopinggan still standing there looking at him. A bright smile from the heart suddenly appeared on Xuanhuan's face, and his eyes became moist for no reason. Xiaopinggan waved towards her, and Xuanhuan also waved towards her. When Xuanhuan turned around and flew away again, her back suddenly felt much lighter. After a while, Xiaopinggan saw Xuanhuan flying to a distant mountain peak with a beautiful attic and a high platform, and was welcomed in by a large number of people pouring out of it. This silly girl. Xiaopinggan smiled, shook his head slightly, then withdrew his gaze and flew towards the east of Longjiao city that Xuanhuan pointed to just now. According to Xiaopinggan's habit, when he came here, he didn't rush to find a place. Instead, he first found a lively and noisy restaurant in the city that was full of guests. He ordered some food in the restaurant and ate while eating. Listening to the discussions of the summoners in the restaurant, he collected useful information for himself. What Xiaopinggan didn't expect was that the news that Mad God seriously injured Xuanhuan had actually spread, and almost everyone in Longjiao city knew about it. Xiaopinggan secretly guessed that there might be other masters peeping at the earth-shattering battle from a distance that night, which is why the news spread so quickly. In addition to this news, there is another news that has something to do with Xiaopinggan, that is, there was a team of blood demon cult troops in Longjiao city before. Unexpectedly, that team and the Great Shang military in Longjiao city sent a team of masters who entered the world of god-killing insects met, and the two sides had several frictions and contests here. After the news came that Xuanhuan was seriously injured by the Mad God and escaped, just a week ago, the troops of the Great Shang Kingdom raided the team of the Blood Demon cult. The troops of the Blood Demon cult suffered heavy losses and had to flee. In order to avoid being retaliated by the Blood Demon cult, the team of summoners from the Great Shang Kingdom also evacuated Longjiao city, missing Xiaopinggan. In the past few days when many masters of the Blood Demon cult entered the world of god-killing insects, Xiaopinggan has not yet seen his face. Due to various reasons, many masters have been damaged. Even Xuanhuan was severely wounded by the Mad God. Ping'an deeply felt that he really came to the right place this time in the god-killing insect realm. Many of the other news in the restaurant were related to the Pantheon star and the ancient relics. During the period when Xiaopinggan and Xuanhuan were trapped in the land of God's fall, the activities of the primeval relics suddenly intensified. In addition to the Pantheon star, not only the remains of the ancient clan can be seen in many places, and many summoners have been brutally murdered. At this moment, in the world of god-killing insects, with the emergence of Mad God, there is also a surging undercurrent. Many summoners are gathered in Longjiao city, discussing a crusade against the ancient relics. In addition, Xiaopinggan also heard some news about other trading world beads and auctions. It was very rewarding. After one meal, Xiaopinggan already had a rough understanding of the current situation in Longjiao city. After finishing the meal and paying, Xiaopinggan left the restaurant and flew directly towards the Iron Sword Peak that Xuanhuan had mentioned before, preparing to find a place to stay first. The world bead he got from Xuanhuan before has not been fused yet. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 638. Iron Sword Peak, as the name suggests, is like an iron sword, steep and straight, pointing straight into the sky. Half of the more than 5,000-meter peak is already above the clouds, looking quite ethereal, with a hint of fairy spirit, and on the entire mountain, everywhere they are all pines and cypresses growing on the cliffs and mountain walls, and are dotted with artificial pavilions and lofts, which look quite impressive. Behind those pavilions and attics are caves dug into the mountains. The owner of Iron Sword Peak is Old Man Iron Sword, a summoner from the legendary Nine Sun realm and a formation master. He is only one step away from the demigods. Iron Sword Peak is Old Man Iron Sword's property in Longjiao city. Old Man Jian lives at the top of Iron Sword Peak. To the summoner, this place is equivalent to a high-end hotel, making money every day. The reason why this place is famous is because of the rules set by the Old Man Iron Sword. Guests entering Iron Sword Peak must not be embarrassed by anyone before leaving Iron Sword Peak. This rule was established with the blood and heads of countless people who wanted to enter Iron Sword Peak to cause trouble. When Xiaopingan came to Iron Sword Peak, he found that there was an 8-door iron lock mountain ceiling formation guarding the entire Iron Sword Peak. The mountain ceiling formation was extremely luxurious. With Xiaopingan's professional eyes, he could see that it can be seen that the formation disk of the mountain ceiling formation was probably made by a master of formations. It would not take 3 or 2 years to refine a huge formation disk that could cover the entire mountain. To enter Iron Sword Peak, you can only enter through the mountain gate at the foot of the peak, go through the formalities before entering, and the same applies when leaving. The management here is in order. The people responsible for managing Iron Sword Peak are summoned servants, maids, housekeepers, and the like. For a powerful summoner, one person can be like thousands of troops or a huge team. Xiaopingan came to Iron Sword Peak and expressed his intention. A summoned attendant took Xiaopingan towards the top of Iron Sword Peak. Along the way, Xiaopingan also saw some summoned craftsmen digging stone steps and arranging water features on Iron Sword Peak. In a short time, Taijian Peak's attendants brought Xiaopingan to the entrance of a cave. The entrance to the cave is facing the southeast. There are several vigorous pine trees at the entrance. There is a pavilion not far away. The nearest cave is more than 100 meters away. A few birds are chirping in the trees. It looks pretty good. The waiter opened the door of the cave with a key, and walked more than 20 meters from the entrance to the cave. There are things like realgar beads, and the cave also has a warm jade stone bed for meditating, and a secret room where you can test spells. It is indeed a good place for retreat and practice. My guest, this is cave number 77 of Iron Sword Peak. This cave can be used by 1 or 2 people. The fee here is 700 gold coins per day, which does not include the rental fee of the cave array. If you want to rent it, to protect the cave, we can provide the Golden Crow Formation, Lianji Ice and Fire Formation, 100-footed Fire Dragon Formation, Tianjia Formation, and 1000 Fantasy Sword Formation for guests to choose from. However, the charges for different formation discs are also different. The lowest rental cost per formation disc is 100 gold coins per day, and the highest is 1,200 gold coins per day. Of course, if the guest brings his own formation plate, that's fine too. There is also a guild hall and tavern on Iron Sword Peak for rent, so that the guest can entertain guests here. The waiter was introducing Xiaopingan. Sure enough, he knows how to do business, and the array cave is rented separately. 700 gold coins a day may not seem high, but this is only for high-level summoners. In fact, this price is already sky-high in other places in the Yuankai world and in the secular world. Xiaopingan looked at the cave and nodded, I only need this cave, and I don't need the formation disc. Okay, our cave is rented on a monthly basis. You can move in after paying at the counter. The monthly payment is 21,000 gold coins. There is a 5% discount for half-year payments and a 10% discount for annual payments. Guests can get the keys after paying. If you don't have money, there is also a pawn shop in Iron Sword Peak, where you can use valuable world beads, treasures or magic weapons as collateral. Okay, then I'll stay here. After seeing the cave, Xiaopingan decisively went to the front desk and paid for the year directly. The main purpose of his retreat this time is to refine the hands of the divine body in his body. 1 year is definitely not enough. In addition, Zhumotion and the Blood Demon sect failed in Longjiao City, and it is impossible to return to Longjiao City in a short time. Plus Longjiao City has channels to obtain the Boundary Pearl, so Xiaopingan has made plans to concentrate on training in Longjiao City to improve his strength. Especially after seeing the contest between Mad God and Z Emotion last time, Xiaopinggan deeply felt that the so-called Tanja realm may be proud of in front of low-level summoners, but in front of the real strong ones, the Seven Suns realm is not enough. After looking at it, he is like an ant. After entering the nether realm, there is a realm, a sky, and the difference is the abyss. He is still separated from the realm of demigods by thousands of mountains and rivers, let alone becoming a god, so the road is long and long. Come on, we can only guard against arrogance and impetuosity and take it step by step. Returning to cave number 77 of Iron Sword Peak again, Xiaopinggan has already taken the key of the magic weapon here and has become the master here. Opening the door of the cave, Xiaopinggan summoned the god of Fortune Boy and walked around the cave. He found that there was no problem. He tried it. There was no powerful restriction in the mountain inside the iron sword. As long as he opened the formation plate, he could use earth escape. The technique can make him leave the cave at any time, and then he feels relieved. After taking out an 8-level golden locked turtle shell 5-element inverted and mysterious serial array, activated it to protect the cave, and then released a few puppet spiders, Xiaopinggan finally breathed a long sigh of relief and completely relaxed. Finally settled down for the time being. Xiaopinggan shook his head and smiled bitterly. Then he moved his hand and took out the boundary bead that he had robbed from Shu Longzi before. The boundary bead was dark red, not too special. There were several small seal characters in the boundary bead that read Sima Yan chooses his daughter-in-law. Xiaopinggan looked at it over and over with the G-Pearl, and his mind was filled with historical stories about Emperor Wu of Jin Dynasty, Sima Yan, choosing his daughter-in-law. From a historical perspective, Sima Yan's choice of his daughter-in-law had a very far-reaching impact, because Sima Yan chose the wrong daughter-in-law, and the entire country and China paid a heavy price for it. It can be said that if Sima Yan if he had not chosen the wrong daughter-in-law for his son and had not knocked down the first domino that pushed the country to self-destruction, then the tragedy and national catastrophe of the 5 husbands could most likely have been avoided. The dark red brilliance of the world bead is like the bride's head cover, and also like the color of solidified blood. I really want to kill the traitor. Xiaopinggan held the boundary bead and pondered for a while, then said to himself, with a drop of blood, his whole body was wrapped in a dark red light cocoon. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 639. Your Majesty, Sun Tzu, the Secretary and Superintendent of the Marquis of Jiabei County, is asking for an audience outside the palace. As soon as Xiaopinggan opened his eyes, he saw a eunuch standing at the door and reporting to him. Xiaopinggan looked around. This was a large hall. It should be the place where Emperor Wu of Jin Sima Yan usually handled government affairs in the palace. It was already evening, because the candlesticks in the main hall were lit with candles. The entire hall was brightly lit. There were 2 rows of guards standing at the entrance of the hall. A eunuch in red was coming to the side of the hall and whispered. Xiaopinggan lowered his head again and saw a thick long beard on his chin, wearing a yellow dragon robe, and holding a memorial in his hand. The memorial was written by General Wei Guan, and it was about Qinliang in the northwest. 2 states military. Xiaopinggan put down the memorial in his hand, glanced at the guards outside the palace, and asked the eunuch, who is the palace guard on duty tonight? The eunuch who answered was stunned for a moment. He didn't know why the emperor suddenly asked this, but he quickly replied, Sima Ji is guarding the palace tonight. Xiaopinggan has no impression of who Sima Ji is. Even if Xiaopinggan is a historian, it is impossible to know every mission in history. However, this person's surname is Sima and he is responsible for the palace guard. He should be from the Sima family, and he deeply trusted Sima Yan, which made Xiaopinggan feel relieved. Oh, I understand. What's going on with Sun Tzu? From what I heard from Mr. Sun, it seems that he is here for the prince's marriage. Didn't His Majesty ask Sun Tzu to inquire about Jia Chang's daughter Jia Nanfan last time? I think Mr. Sun must have news. With a smile on his face, he glanced at Xiaopingan secretly, and he was still pouring medicine into Xiaopingan with a low eyebrow. Old slave also heard that Jia Chang's daughter Jia Nan is beautiful and fragrant, virtuous, and everyone outside praises her. Your Majesty asked Mr. Sun to inquire, just in time to confirm. Xiaopingan took a deep look at the old eunuch and sighed in his heart. Emperor Wu of Jin Dynasty, Sima Yan, was a wise man. Unexpectedly, in the end, he was deceived by these villains and Sun Tzu and the people beside him in choosing his daughter-in-law. When the three of them became tigers, they mistakenly chose Jia Chang's daughter Jia Nanfan as the crown prince, which eventually led to the Eight Kings Rebellion, severely damaged the vitality of the entire country, and made an eternal mistake. Without Jia Nanfan, there would be no rebellion of the Eight Kings, and without the rebellion of the Eight Kings, there would be no Xuanhuan. What destroyed the Western Jin dynasty and caused serious disasters to the entire country was because Sima was deceived and chose the wrong daughter-in-law by mistake. Choosing the wrong daughter-in-law, ruining the country, ruining all lives, and almost causing the Huaxia clan to be exterminated, this kind of lesson is really too cruel. Let Sima Ji come to see me. Xiaopingan withdrew his gaze, looked at the book, and ordered. When the eunuch saw that Sima Yan did not immediately summon Sun Tzu, the eunuch of the Marquis of Jiabei County, to come to see him, but instead asked the guard Sima Ji to come to see him, he did not dare to say anything and quickly went down to tell him, who is calling Xiaopingan the emperor. The emperor wants to see him. It's normal for someone not to see someone or to want someone to wait for a while. Xiaopingan looked at Wei Guan's memorial. The characters on the memorial were like flying dragons and phoenixes, and they looked like they were written by everyone. Wei Guan's calligraphy was really good. Looking at the handwriting on the memorials directed by Sima Yan on the table, Xiaopingan nodded, picked up a pen and a piece of paper, and in the blink of an eye, he wrote a few lines on the paper according to Sima Yan's handwriting, and then blew blow on the paper to quickly dry the writing on the paper. After the handwriting was dry, Xiaopingan folded the paper. After a while, the sound of armor scraping could be heard outside the hall, and a general was already standing outside the hall. Your Majesty, General Sima is here. The old eunuch came into the palace to report. Let him in. Yes. After a while, a general in armor and a helmet, who was in his 30s and had a majestic build, with a beard and tiger eyes and thick eyebrows, strode into the palace, saluted Xiaopingan, and said in a rough voice, "See you, Sir Your Majesty, please redeem the armor of this humble minister, who is unable to salute." When Xiaopingan saw the armor on this man, he knew that although Sima Ji was unknown in history, he was indeed a loyal, reliable, and able man. The armor on Sima Ji was extremely heavy, at least dozens of kilograms, and he had to take it off before putting it on. They were all very tired. Ordinary generals would be on guard duty at the palace at night and would have to patrol everywhere, so they might not be fully armed. But this Sima Ji was extremely honest, meticulous, not sloppy at all, and his strength should be pretty good. You are here, I can rest assured. The safety of the palace tonight will be left to you. No one is allowed to enter or leave the palace without my order. Xiaopingan stared at Sima Ji and explained. That Sima Ji was startled, but in an instant, he raised his head, with a flash of light in his eyes, clasped his fists and accepted the order. Wei ministers, obey your orders. Xiaopingan walked down from behind the desk, came directly to Sima Ji, patted Sima Ji's shoulder, and handed the note he had just written to Sima Ji. Go ahead and press the instructions on the note. Order to go and sit down. That Sima Ji bowed, took the note with both hands, and slowly exited the hall. The old eunuch had just been peeking at the note Xiaopingan handed to Sima Ji. Unfortunately, Xiaopingan folded the note. The old eunuch didn't see a word of what was written on the note. After Sima Ji left the hall, Xiaopingan returned to the dragon chair at the long table and said calmly to the old eunuch, "Let Sun Tzu come in." Yes. After a while, Sun Tzu came in. Sun Tzu was already quite old. He looked at the ground while walking and never glanced randomly for fear of stepping on ants. He looked very cautious. But just such a person was one of the culprits and operators who almost destroyed China. Why did Sun Tzu deceive Sima Yan and insist on giving Jia Nanfan to Sima Yan as his daughter-in-law? The reason was because Sun Tzu and Jia Chong, Jia Nanfan's father, were in the same party. Ren Kai did not get along with Jia Chong and recommended Jia Chong to Qin Liang in the northwest. The two states were appointed governors, and the people in Qin and Liang states were fierce and there were many barbarians. Jia Chong did not want to leave the center of power of the empire and go to Qin and Liang states to take office. Then Sun Tzu gave Jia Chong an idea, as long as your daughter marries, give it to the prince and become the prince's concubine. You will be the prince's father-in-law, so naturally you don't have to go to Qin and Liang to take up your post. Jia Nanfan is the daughter of Jia Chong, with a fierce personality and an ugly appearance, while the Prince Sima Zhong is stupid, timid, weak, and incompetent. At a critical moment for the fate of the Sima family's royal family, he was able to betray Sima Yan and the entire empire for his own personal gain without hesitation. Such a guy is also very accomplished in literary music, just like Cai Jing's calligraphy, and he interprets the state of a refined egoist to the extreme. The rise of such people to the center is a disaster for the entire country, because in their hearts, everything except themselves is expendable. Sun Tzu is here to see your majesty. Sun Tzu bowed to Xiaopingan in a polite manner as he entered the hall. Normally, Sima Yan would ask him to exempt himself from the ceremony, but today was different. Sun Tzu saluted there and waited for a long time, but did not hear Xiaopingan ask him to stand down. There was silence in the hall. Sun Tzu maintained a salute posture. Xiaopingan did not speak, and he did not dare to straighten his back. In just a moment, a layer of cold sweat broke out on Sun Tzu's temples, and his body began to tremble slightly. "Okay, get back on your feet," Xiaopingan said calmly. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Sun Tzu wiped the cold sweat that had just appeared on his forehead with his sleeve. He glanced at Xiaopingan secretly and found that Xiaopingan was looking at the memorial. He only looked at himself with his peripheral vision, looking a little careless. Sun Tzu, there was a sudden rush in his heart, and he just tried to calm down, secretly wondering if he had done something wrong recently to make His Majesty unhappy, but after thinking about it, he didn't feel that he had done anything wrong, so he calmed down a little. "What brings Sun Qing here?" Xiaopingan put down the memorial and asked. "Ahem, Your Majesty asked me to find out how Master Jia's daughter Jia Nanfan is doing before. Wei Chen has sent someone to find out and is about to report back to Your Majesty," Sun Tzu said calmly. "Oh, let's talk about the result." Xiaopingan suddenly seemed to be energetic. "Jia Nan is virtuous, and her country is beautiful and fragrant. Master Jia has been strict with this daughter since she was a child. She has been taught music and calligraphy since she was a child. Now she is a lady in Luoyang City, and she is a perfect match for the prince." Following Sun Qing's introduction, Xiaopingan's eyes suddenly turned cold. He had already given Sun Qing a warning just now, but Sun Qing was still greedy and clever, and wanted to deceive him, so don't blame yourself. Golden Summoner. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 640. Xiaopingan looked at Sun Tzu, who was eloquent but cautious in promoting Jia Nanfan. His eyes gradually became cold, but his face smiled. "According to Sun Qing, I heard rumors about Jia Nanfan before. There are 5 reasons why. Are they all lies?" Before Sima Yan chose his daughter-in-law, Sima Yan had actually heard some news about Jia Nanfan, the daughter of Jia Chong. The so-called 5 impossibilities refer to Jia Nanfan's jealous personality, destined to have a young son, ugly appearance, short stature, and thick and dark skin. In ancient times, women with these 5 undesirables characteristics were generally ugly and vicious to the extreme, with no redeeming features. They were the stars of disaster. Even if they married the common people, let alone the prince, they would be disliked by everyone. It was such a woman who, under the package of a group of people, deceived Emperor Wu of Jin Sima Yan and became Sima Yan's daughter-in-law. According to etiquette, Sima Yan only had the opportunity to see what Jiananfen looked like after the prince's marriage. But at that time, it was too late to replace him. The prince Sima Zhong was stupid and cowardly, and was eaten to death by Jiananfen. He did not even dare to complain in front of Sima Yan, which eventually led to a series of tragedies. Sun Tzu's expression did not change, and he bowed to Xiaoping'an with a stern look on his face. Your Majesty, those who say that Jiananfen has the 5 things are absolutely slanderous words. Maybe someone knew that Your Majesty wanted to choose the crown prince, so he deliberately. Your Majesty, please be careful about the false news that has been spread. The someone mentioned by Sun Tzu is alluding to the general Wei Guan, because compared with Jia Chong, Wei Guan also has a daughter who is the candidate for the crown prince that Sima Yan is concerned about, and Wei Guan's daughter, Feng Ping, very good. Compared to Jiananfen, he has the 5 qualities: virtuous personality, masculine appearance, beautiful appearance, slender figure, and fine white skin. If Sima Yan had chosen Wei Guan's daughter when choosing his daughter-in-law, there would probably have been no such thing as the 8 Kings Rebellion and the 5 Husbands Rebellion. This guy Sun Tzu was deceiving the saints and beating him up at the same time. Xiaoping'an didn't say anything, he just stood up, walked down from behind the desk, passed directly over Sun Tzu, who was still there, and walked towards the outside of the palace. I want to take a look around the palace arsenal today. Sun Tzu, please come with me, sir. Sun Tzu was stunned. He didn't know why the emperor wanted to go to the arsenal tonight. However, the arsenal was not a place that ordinary people could enter. It was an important place in the palace where treasures were placed. It was impossible for ordinary people to go in and see. Emperor inviting him to go see it together, Sun Tzu thought it was a kind of favor, so after being stunned for a moment, he followed Xiaoping'an towards the arsenal. A eunuch shouted in a long and drawn-out voice, Your Majesty, you, drive, your weapon, your library. When the guards and eunuchs outside heard that Xiaoping'an wanted to go to the arsenal, they all hurriedly lit up lanterns, and the guards led the way, and a group of people headed towards the palace arsenal in a mighty manner. I wonder why Your Majesty is interested in showing off his arsenal tonight. Sun Tzu followed Xiaoping'an carefully and asked respectfully. It's nothing. I suddenly want to see the 3 treasures of the previous dynasty tonight. Xiaoping'an is telling the truth. If he becomes Sima Yan this time, what he wants to see most is actually the 3 treasures of the Han dynasty stored in the arsenal of the Jin Palace. Those 3 treasures are Lu Bang's. The python sword used, Wang Mang's head, and the clogs of Saint Kong were used. These 3 treasures have been in the palace since Emperor Guangguo of the Han dynasty. They are the national treasures of the Han dynasty and have been kept since then. Whether it was Cao Wei before or the Jin dynasty now, they have kept these 3 treasures well and dare not. According to the trajectory of history, it was not until after Sima Zhong succeeded to the throne that the 3 national treasures were completely lost due to an accident and a fire in the palace arsenal. Xiaoping'an didn't say a word all the way, and after more than 10 minutes, he arrived at the palace arsenal. Your Majesty has arrived. As a eunuch shouted at the top of his lungs, all the guards outside the palace arsenal came out to greet him. Welcome, Your Majesty. Xiaoping'an waved his hand gently, and the arsenal door, which had been soaked in tung oil and covered with iron sheets and copper nails, was slowly pushed open by 2 guards to welcome the emperor. The wall lamps in the arsenal were also lit one by one. The entire arsenal was brightly lit, with guards standing solemnly under almost every wall lamp. Xiaoping'an strode into the arsenal. The arsenal is very large, just a huge warehouse filled with treasures everywhere. This is the place where the Jin dynasty gathered all the rare treasures from all over the world. The official in charge of guarding the arsenal followed Xiaopinggan with the account books and books in the arsenal. He introduced Xiaopinggan to the situation in the arsenal as he walked, not daring to be careless at all. "Take me to see Wang Mang's head," Xiaopinggan directly ordered. "Yes." After a while, the officials of the arsenal took Xiaopinggan to a separate room in the innermost part of the arsenal. In that room, there were 3 treasures left from the Han dynasty. When he saw the 3 treasures, Xiaopinggan, as a history expert, felt excited about unraveling the veil of history and witnessing China's legendary national treasures with his own eyes. At the same time, he was also shocked, because as an array master, he had learned from those 3 treasures. "I felt a powerful formation and mysterious aura. The placement of those 3 treasures in the room was by no means random. Wang Mang's head was packed in a wooden box and placed in the middle. On Wang Mang's head, hanging high, was the python-slaying sword used by Liu Bang, the founder of the Han dynasty. The python-slaying sword was unsheathed, with the tip of the blade pointing downwards, pointing directly at Wang Mang. The position of Wang Mang's head is unusual, and under Wang Mang's head, close to the ground, is a pair of wooden shoes full of historical vicissitudes. These are the shoes of Saint Kong. The python-slaying sword of Emperor Jiaozu of the Han dynasty is in the sky, the saint's footsteps touch the ground, and Wang Mang's head hangs in the middle, sandwiched between 2 sacred objects." Xiaopinggan was fascinated by these 3 sacred objects. In a trance, Xiaopinggan's mind suddenly felt a picture, a sword as huge as a hill, hanging high under the sky, supporting the infinite sky, the sword the light edges as dazzling as the rising sun, ready to slash out at any time. On the ground, a pair of wooden shoes are placed on the earth, standing motionless on the ground. Between the 2, a huge white python dozens of miles long is rolling, flying into the sky. There was no way to escape, so he was suppressed by the sword and wooden shoes. Behind the sword that held up the sky was the figure of an emperor, but the figure of the emperor was already a little dim at this time. The person stepping on wooden shoes is the light and shadow of Saint Kong's figure, and the light and shadow of Saint Kong's figure are still clear. Just as Xiaopinggan's consciousness appeared, the giant sword hanging high in the sky began to roar, and the flames were brilliant, which suddenly shocked the moving white giant python, making the white giant python tremble. Trembling, not daring to make the slightest move. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty." Xiaopinggan's mind was immersed in the strange realm brought about by those 3 treasures. An unknown amount of time had passed. When he reacted with excitement, he heard a eunuch beside him calling him softly. Xiaopinggan looked at the faces of the people around him and saw that everyone was looking at him with surprised eyes. "What's wrong?" Xiaopinggan asked. "Ahem, please forgive me. Your Majesty just looked at these 3 treasures." He closed his eyes and remained silent for almost 2/4 of an hour. "I thought Your Majesty was asleep." The eunuch who opened the mouth explained in a low voice. For 2/4 of an hour, that is, more than an hour, the people around them had just seen Xiaopinggan looking at these 3 treasures in rapt attention, and no one dared to express their anger, and no one dared to disturb him. Xiaopinggan looked at the 3 treasures again. The more he looked, the more mysterious and extraordinary he felt. He directly asked the officials in the arsenal, "Have these 3 treasures always been placed like this?" "Your Majesty, these 3 treasures have been placed alone in this room since the previous dynasty. They have always been placed like this." The officials who guarded the arsenal in the past generations followed the instructions left by their predecessors and said that these 3 treasures must not be touched without permission. "Why?" The official guarding the arsenal glanced at Xiaopinggan and lowered his head. "Your Majesty, please forgive me for my innocence, and I dare to speak out." "I forgive you, tell me why." "Because the previous admonitions left in the arsenal say that Wang Mang was originally the white snake killed by Emperor Jiaozu of the Han dynasty." Mang was a python. Wang Mang usurped the Han dynasty in order to avenge his death by Emperor Jiaozu. Wang Mang's eldest son Wang Yu discovered that Wang Mang was abnormal, and he was ready to pour blood on Wang Mang. Unfortunately, Wang Yu was killed by Wang Mang after his defeat. After Wang Mang was executed, the Han dynasty found an expert to set up the situation with the python sword and the saint's footsteps, in order to shock Wang Mang. After hearing this explanation, Xiaoping'an looked at the three treasures that had been handed down from the Han dynasty and was speechless for a long time. At this moment, Xiaoping'an heard the sound of armor outside. Sima had come back to resume his duties. He walked outside the house, bowed and reported in a deep voice, Your Majesty's orders have been completed. Okay. Xiaoping'an let out a long breath. He looked at Sun Tzu, smiled slightly, his eyes suddenly became sharp, and said softly, Sun Qing, who is more harmful to the country, you or Mang? As soon as Xiaoping'an said these words, the atmosphere in the arsenal was like ice. It froze all of a sudden. The expressions of everyone around him changed. The palace guards couldn't help but put their hands on the swords at their waists. Sima, who was standing outside the room, stared at Sun Tzu with eyes like arrows. Sun Tzu's face changed drastically, his legs went weak, and he almost knelt down. He swallowed a mouthful of spit, and asked in a trembling voice, Your Majesty, what do you mean by this? Xiaoping'an sighed, looked at the python-slaying sword, and said something. Wang Mang's usurpation of the Han dynasty failed in the end. The Han dynasty still has Guangguo to revive, and China will still be China. Even if Wang Mang succeeded in usurping the Han dynasty, China will still be China. It's still China. It's just the Han dynasty and the change of dynasties that will perish, not the world. But if I am deceived by you today, it will not only be me, the Jin dynasty, who will perish in the future, but the world, and countless people in this world. All of you will turn into bones because of your own selfishness today. China is uninhabited for thousands of miles. Sun Tzu, your harm is 10 times greater than that of Wang Mang.